Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining us today. We're excited to share what we know about listening intelligence and dive into the question: is one listening habit better than another? My name is Craig, and I've got some colleagues from our team joining today. I serve as Senior Vice President at 34 Strong, leading the business development team. I also have Zane Grace here today. Zane is our public sector market leader, working with large public sector clients at the state and federal levels. And Jill Lang is joining us. Jill is the glue of our team, and her official role is to keep us moving forward as sales coordinator. This week, we're going to take a little bit of a unique angle, both to help you understand the framework better and for you to take away ideas that you can use. So let's refresh quickly on why this matters. Here's some data. By the way, this is for our analytical listeners. 70 to 80% of our workday is spent communicating in some form. 45 to 55% of that time is on the listening side of communication. Studies have shown that lack of collaboration or ineffective communication is the primary cause of workplace failures. This is from a study that was done with business leaders, where they identified ineffective communication as a major cause. Another study looked at employees and miscommunication, where 94% of employees said that major miscommunication happens at least once per week. And 29% of those same employees said it happens every single day. The result of this miscommunication is failure and lost time. The data shows that just under 20% of our week is lost to miscommunication. The number comes in at 7.47 hours per week, or just less than one day. I know I've run through those numbers quickly. I'm happy to share more about them if you reach out. And so while that's the overall business case, there are three major implications for a sales team, which is what the three of us are going to talk about today. Understanding listening intelligence will 100% improve sales. And there are three ways. It will improve your team culture. It will speed sales along, and it will teach you how to speak adaptively, not just listen adaptively, but to speak adaptively, which is the ultimate way to sell, to land your communication more effectively with your client, your prospect. So let's dive in. Zane, could you share more about the four listening habits?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. So for the audience out there, I'm the public sector market leader at 34 Strong. I am the guy who works primarily with our government clients doing enterprise deals anywhere from 50,000 to 15 million. So you've probably taken some active listening courses, learned how to do the oohs and the ahs and the smile and nod. But how can you get a little bit more effective and incisive with that in order to close more deals, improve your average order size, and really make the client feel heard? So you're building a longer term partnership versus just having a transaction and having them feel done with it. So the four listening styles are conceptual, connective, analytical, and reflective. We're each going to talk about our own a little bit because I'm a dual dominant analytical reflective. I move very easily between those two. Craig is a off the charts conceptual, so he really cares about the big ideas, the big picture. And our colleague Jill is a connective listener, so she cares a lot about how people are impacted, how they feel. Now, here's how I use this in a sales context. Each of these four listening styles is going to have their own body language, their own typical statements, their typical concerns or objections, typical filtering. What this means is that if you give the same exact sales pitch to 10 different clients, they're all going to hear different things and they're going to tune out others based on their listening style. So, if you as a salesperson can start to pick up on what listening habit your prospects are dominant in, you can begin to tailor your pitch so that you're saying more of the things that make it through their filter and convince them to buy from you. And you can say less of the things that are just going to get tuned out anyway. So analytical says, I care about the data. It says, prove it to me, right? In a sales context, this is the prospect who's going to want to see data. They're going to want to see case studies. They're going to want to see testimonials. They're going to want to see proof that you can do what you say you can do, right? They don't care about an anecdote. They don't care about your company values. They don't care about that you have the best team, whatever that means, right? Anything subjective, you're going to lose them. And they may not say it. You may not be able to see it on their face, but they're going to start to tune you out unless they feel that you care enough about the integrity of what you're selling, that they can feel confident and really like pass that, not just enthusiasm, but that integrity, that trust, that confidence onto them through the proof. For example, if you are an analytical listener, you probably keyed in when Craig was talking about the data behind LQ and the business case for why a company might invest in this for their sales team. You may have tuned out anything that felt more subjective, that you went, okay, that sounds cool, but I'm going to need to see the source on that, right? Send me your bibliography. You may also be the type of person that wants to see the meta analysis and the actual data science behind how this was put together, which we're happy to send you, by the way. Just reach out. No problemo. Reflective is a little bit different. And because I'm a dual dominant, I can move between these two very seamlessly. For me, reflective is a habit that is rooted in experience. So whenever I'm part of a group discussion or conversation, I'm thinking about it in terms of how I apply my own experience, my own context to that situation. So when you're talking to someone who's high in reflective, you're going to want to ask questions like, you know, did I explain that okay? Does that make sense for your context? What does your experience tell you about how this is going to roll out, right? You're going to get a little bit more tactical, practical, and lean into them as the expert. If they're the prospect, that'll help them to feel really engaged with you. This is also the person that's going to have resting thinking face, as we like to say. They may look completely disengaged from the conversation, but a really big part of listening intelligence is that we tend to think people are only listening if they're displaying like active listening trademarks, right? The smile and nod, the repeat back what you said, the ask questions. But that's not necessarily true. Reflective listeners can be very engaged, they just might not look it. I'll turn it over to Craig to talk about conceptual.
Sure. Thanks, Zane. Yes, you have resting thinking face. I know that from our team meetings. I lovingly call it actually resting Zane face. I'm single dominant conceptual listener. My filter is basically what can we do with this information? What is now possible because of this information? I assume that you have the data to back up what you're telling me until you prove otherwise. So, not that I don't care about the data, but I come with an assumption that it's there, that it's solid, and I will get around to asking it at some point in vetting, but the vetting is going to come after because I'm more interested in the idea up front. But as a prospect, as a customer, um, I, I might trick a few people because I actually really love your idea. I love what it does. I'm curious about it. I want to engage with it. And so I'm not great for a salesperson from that perspective. And Jill might say the same thing as a connective, but I can trick some salespeople into thinking they're a lot further ahead than they really are. I like to say too conceptual. People talking is like a rocket ship to nowhere. It doesn't matter. We're here for the ride, and we have actually zero destination in mind. When I'm ideating, I'm not testing is this idea rock solid. I'm just enjoying the ideation, and I rely on colleagues like Zane to test the reality of my grand ideas. So I'm going to pass it to Jill to talk about connective listening.
Yeah, so it's really great to hear you all talk about your preferences. So mine is connective, as you know. And so I often am nodding when you're speaking, and I'm leaning in and I'm smiling a lot. And as a connective listener, I am really interested in making you feel comfortable. So I want you to feel like I'm really paying attention, that I'm engaged. And it's really a way of showing support and empathy through my listening style. Because what I really truly want as a connective listener is for the other person to feel valued. And I'm also listening for how does what they're saying impact others. And I think Zane mentioned that before. I really want other people, especially if we're talking about teams. Um, I'm thinking about if somebody brings up an idea, Craig's conceptually bringing up something, and I'm thinking, how is that going to impact the work of some of my colleagues in the other department? So I'm always thinking about the impact of others. This brings me to the dynamic we have as a team. And one of the things that I love about the three of us is that we're so different. So within our team dynamic, we've talked to each other about how to listen better to one another and help each other understand. In listening intelligence, you're looking for a shared meaning. And so what we have decided is to come together and talk about our preferences and to better understand each of the different nuances between them. So, one of the things that we've done as a team is we've talked about what would be a better Slack message, for example. So, we have implemented a bottom line on top. Where when we communicate via Slack, we have either the question that we want answered or the subject at the top, and then we have the details underneath in bullet points. Um, a couple of other things that we've noticed is our sharing of ideas has become more comfortable because we're more open. We're not feeling threatened by each other's, perhaps maybe what we might have thought before was judgmental. And I'll give you an example. When we had um, first started working together, Zane would ask me a lot of questions about how many hours do I need? How long will it take? Whatever data he would ask. And I would think to myself, oh, does he not trust me? Is this something, I'm such a responsible person. Why is he doubting me? So what I realized and when I found out that he was analytical, I realized what he's thinking about is how to use my time wisely, how to take some things off of my plate so that I can be a more effective colleague and employee. So when you speak to each other and you open up, especially with a tool like listening intelligence, it really does create a pathway for innovation and engagement within the team.
I love you sharing that, Joe, because that really reflects my experience of working together as well, where um, when we get in the mix, we're moving quickly, and none of us want to feel misunderstood. None of us want to communicate unclearly, and yet I think probably everyone feels misunderstood at work multiple times a day if
Yeah.
just as you're moving through things large and small. So
Yeah.
Craig, Jill, and I work together every day to move the needle on big deals. But for now, if you're a sales leader thinking about how you level up your team, you think about it from those two angles. How do I use this with prospects? But also, how do I improve our team communication, our team culture? Because that leads to just a lot more efficiency, getting more done, moving more deals through the pipeline. And I think we've found that ourselves in the year or so that we've been working together as an intact team. So, Craig, as our fearless leader, I'm curious what you would share from your perspective about how listening habits have really informed the way that you work with me and Jill.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, I understand that my habit is conceptual and it's single dominant in a way that neither of you actually share the same habit at all to the same level. And so I'm constantly looking to you to validate my idea after I get it out, right? Don't stop the idea. But I watch your face, Zane, actually, when I'm talking ideas. And I'll stop at some point and say, okay, I know you're thinking about something. Can you respond? I'm ready to start to filter or mitigate or refine the idea a little bit, or simply say, that's wild. Great that you thought about it. As a reflective person, that's just not going to work. And that's fine. I respect that because I understand that I don't know everything and my ideas can be a little bit out there. The same time, though, I think it's important if you're a sales leader and you're not necessarily conceptual like me, but you've got a conceptual salesperson, they're going to be pretty excited about bringing industry knowledge back to you. They're going to want to talk to you about what they're hearing in their sales conversations. And I think it's really important that we don't just pay lip service to saying, hey, what's the market saying to us? That you listen to that and not just listen, but let the conceptual person actually get it out And if it sounds wild, that's fine. But realize there's probably a nugget in there that you need to uncover. Maybe your conceptual listener is not going to uncover it on their own. And that's where your connective, reflective, analytical listener can start to mess with that idea, to massage it and find the nugget that's actually going to benefit your team. So if you can do something that differentiates your product in the market because you have a conceptual that brought back a wild idea, and as a team you massaged it into something, man, you're cooking with gas then,
Mm.
because you're going to be better in the market, better able to sell, right? And isn't that the goal, right? And so it's not just pie in the sky thinking, but we need every one of those habits. So back to the original question, is one habit better than the others? The rhetorical answer is obviously no. We need to work with each other because we make each other better.
Yeah, I
Mm.
love that, Craig, because I'm hearing a really core need there that I want to tap into. What I'm hearing you say is, I don't need you to agree with me, but I need to feel heard. If I don't
Sure.
have any avenue to feel heard, I feel unvalued and I will start to retreat.
I think you're spot on, and I think that would be true across the board for us as humans. But in the listening intelligence space, conceptuals need to sort of just get that idea out there, and then and everyone agree that, hey, your ideas aren't gonna create world peace, but let's hear them and then let's massage them and see if there's something there.
Yeah. I think that it's really important for leaders in a coaching context to be able to adapt to their employees, especially in like one-to-one meetings, to make space to value the listening habits of their employees and be mindful of it. It is not a one-way street.
I I think context is key, right? We are mismatched to some degree. And there are times when resting Zane face, I'm like, can you just show me something? And yet I know I can just pause. I can make a little joke about it. I can get some amazing feedback, right? Because the feedback is tremendous. You just need to think about it. And you're not going to waste energy on your face when the energy is going to your thinking process. And so just knowing that about you is so productive, right? And same with Joe. As a connective listener, and I just want to be real clear for everybody, she's a connective listener and she's highly connective as a person. I connect with people when I sell, but that doesn't mean I'm a connective listener, right? Um, I definitely try to adapt how I listen. And when Jill is maybe leaning into her connective listening by speaking in a connective way, and it's not my natural way to listen, I now can do it better though, and find exactly what she's saying so I can interact better, more personally, more professionally, or answer that question or give feedback, whatever it is, I can be more effective knowing really the framework around all that is connective listening,
Mhm.
connective speaking. So
Yeah.
context, I
Yeah.
guess the bottom line on top or bottom line at the end is context is key. There's various contexts for this, and it's not necessarily going to be the same approach every time. And we will get into the sales context and why that matters so much too.
Awesome. All right, folks. So that's a little bit about how listening intelligence can really impact your team culture in a way that's going to enhance your bottom line by getting them more engaged and showing up as their best. Craig is going to move into sharing a little bit about how you can use this and how your team can use this on a sales call with prospects to improve closing percentage and lifetime value.
Right. I think listening intelligence is very appropriately applied in a sales context. We go in though, and I think it's important to remember that we tend to speak like we prefer to listen. But there's also something else that is uh, really resonant in my head, and that's the whole idea of data-driven decisions. It's corporate speak, and I'm not arguing against making decisions based on data, but almost anybody will say, "Well, we're going to make a data-driven decision." But everybody that says that isn't listening for data. They're not an analytical listener, and so we like to go into the sales meeting and bring the data and assume that that's going to close the deal. But if you're talking with somebody that's not an analytical listener, they're filtering your information differently than you're assuming they are. And so When we talk with customers and we're asking them their pain points, we of course want to understand how to partner with them, how to solve their issue, provide a solution that meets a need for them. And we ask a lot of the same questions. There hasn't been a lot that's been added to the sales conversation in a long time. But the thing is, again, there's often a disconnect between how they're filtering information and how we're bringing information. And so I'm going to talk with Jill and Zane here really quickly. Let's talk about listening habits in a sales environment. I'm going to ask Jill first. So I'm teeing you up, Jill.
Okay.
And the question is really this. When somebody's selling to you, because you've made purchases for our team as we talk with vendors, right? You vet them as a connective listener. What is that environment like? What do you want to hear from them? How are you listening? What are you ignoring? Right? Paint that picture for me. There it goes, conceptual. Paint the picture for me about what it's like to be on the customer side as a connective listener, because I want our salespeople to understand what that really means.
Yeah, no, that's really great. When I think about vendors that I've been in contact with, especially it's usually a software as a service, for example. Um, from the connective listening side, I'm looking at how easy is this system to use? Because I think about all the different levels of folks being comfortable with technology and then also the buy-in factor, right? If we're changing systems, what's it going to take? How much time is it going to take my colleagues to help implement this? And is it going to be something that helps us be more productive? And so I'm listening for that information. I do want to make a connection. So don't get me wrong. I do want to like working with the person, but I'm also thinking about, again, impact on others. How is this going to affect my teammates, my colleagues, et cetera? And then I also think about it from just in terms of, are they listening to me? Like, or are they just jumping in? Because it has driven me crazy when I've been in demos and they just jump right in to a sales pitch, but they don't really know what my needs are. And they just have a deck prepared and it's ready and they're not. Then again, I would say that's probably the connective piece, right? They're not really connecting with me. They're not really trying to find out what my needs are. So those are some examples of how I listen in a sales context.
Yeah, and can we put a finer point on it? So I'm fishing for an answer because I think I know, but I would love to hear it from you. So if you're comparing a service, um, when you say how it impacts others, talk to me about that impact and the ease, like what you really want to hear from them, the focus you want them to put on the pitch, the sales pitch to win you over.
Sure. I mean, I think one of the most important things is, are they going to support us, right? Do I have somebody I can contact rather than just a chatbot? I don't mind the chatbots, but I think there are many times where I've actually needed a human being to talk to. So there's that piece. And I think it just goes back to that. I think it goes back to the human connection and being able to rely on them, that they're also responsive. I mean, that's another thing too, right? That shows that they're caring about, I asked a question and then they get me a response quickly.
And I'm going to make an assumption here, thinking about, working between an old and a new system. If they were to say, well, you have to do this transition and we're going to give you a cheat sheet on how to do it. But the salesperson would say, I can tell you don't actually want to do that yourself. So for this small fee, we will do it for you.
Hmm.
They have now mitigated that concern around the impact on others,
Hmm.
because they're now placing that as the top
Yeah.
way to win your business,
Right.
right? Might not be their natural process, but they could actually modify their pitch
Hmm.
rather than say, we're going to give you the bottom line price. Well, we might be willing to spend a little more. You might be able
Yeah.
to justify to us spend a little bit more because now they're going to manage that data transition.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
that's a connective way of thinking about it. And so a
Hmm.
salesperson that says our stuff works and here's the lowest price and just keeps saying that is losing Jill
True.
as a connective listen.
That's true.
Okay. And Zane, as a reflective analytical, put yourself in the customer seat. You've also done something similar. You've reviewed vendors for us. Talk about how you're filtering, what you're assuming, what you're really looking for, what you want to hear them say, etc. Be the customer.
Totally. So analytical is my first filter, so I'll start there. I want you to prove to me that you can do what you say you're going to do. So I want to know, how many total clients have you served? How long have you been in business? What's the average duration of a relationship? Can you give me testimonials and case studies? How relevant are those testimonials and case studies? Are they for a small management consulting firm that offers boutique services, or are they for a totally separate industry that may not apply, right? Those are all the things I want to know. Case studies and testimonials are great, but I also want to know median results. What are the median outcomes you get for an average client, not just for the ones that you want to highlight and share in your sales pitch. So in that sense, I'm kind of a nightmare client, because I'm gonna try and push aside all of the framing and staging that you do and just cut right to the heart of, prove it to me brass tacks. And if you can't, I'm really gonna be on to the next person who can, no offense. I care a lot about implementation, which moves us into reflective. So I've done enough vendor hiring and implementations of service and software at this point that I know where things tend to get hung up. For example, we recently signed a contract with a client satisfaction survey provider. I have hired those vendors before, and I know, okay, Calendly integration gets sticky. How do you do that? Right? I'm
Okay.
going to drill into very specific pieces that come from my experience. And so the best sort of way that you can sell to me as a reflective is, number one, permissive selling. So asking questions throughout. Is it okay if I share this? Is it okay if I send that? Is it okay? Because if you get me saying yes, then I'm more likely to keep saying yes. And it allows me to feel like I'm in control, which reflective really likes, even though you're guiding me the whole way through with the questions that you're asking. Another great way to sell to me as a reflective is to ask me questions like, hey, why now? What have you tried before? Why hasn't that worked? What have you liked about previous solutions? And if you ask me those questions, then all you have to do is highlight the parts of your service that resonate with my experience and de-emphasize the parts that don't. And you're going to be much closer to a sale than if you just launch into the pitch, because I'm going to evaluate your pitch based on my experience, and you could be throwing out, just a lot of things that are going to make it more difficult for you to close me.
Mhm.
So that's some of the way that I'll show up as a buyer.
Hmm.
You do the exact opposite for Craig. You don't get into any of the details. You tell him, here's the dream outcome we're going to take you to. You talk to him about how amazing the beach is going to be. You don't tell him anything about the plane or buying the tickets or standing in line. That's all the stuff I want to know about. You're going to lose him. Just tell him about sipping Mai Tais and how warm the sand is going to feel.
I talk about big ideas and I want to hear the big idea. But what I haven't shared so far is simply that I actually want to know why it works. So give me the big picture, but give me that big why. It Why does your process work? Why do you do what you do? And why does it work? Right? And that's a theoretical thing, that's a big idea thing. And if I believe that, then I'm buying because that fits my conceptual. But so I don't want to say it's pie in the sky, just paint me a nice picture and I'm all on board. The question of why it works, the theoretical behind it, is very much a part of the conceptual listening. So I want to thank everyone for joining. And what I hope you take away from our discussion as a team today is that, one, no listening habit is better than another. Two, that data-driven decisions, while those underpin good decision making, people aren't filtering for data every time. There's just not a chance in the world that everyone listens for data as an analytical listener. We just know that's not true. And so as you add things to your sales capabilities in terms of asking better questions about enhancing your product. Realize that you're going to do yourself a major service by understanding listening intelligence, both how you speak and prefer to listen, but the fact that your customers, your prospects listen and filter in a specific way. And they're going to demonstrate that for you with their body language, with the statements they make, and with the questions they ask. So, our call to action is simply reach out and talk to us. We're happy to just share more about what it is. If you'd like an assessment so you can learn your own listening habit, please reach out. We're happy to share it with you. Thanks for joining us today. We'll talk to you soon.